Tonight, I'm absolutely delighted to be welcoming Paolo Tiramani. Paolo is an American industrial designer, technologist, and a billionaire. Paolo grew up in the UK and is an alumnus of the Central School of Art and Design, which is part of what we now call Central St. Martin's. After college, he started several companies, including the 500 Group Incorporated, an intellectual property licensing company with over 150 patent filings. Currently, Paolo is CEO and majority shareholder of BOXABL, a $3 billion building technology company located in Las Vegas, Nevada. BOXABL counts amongst its earliest customers Elon Musk, the US Department of Defense, and D.R. Horton, which is America's largest home builder. I'm going to invite you now, with to say in advance thanks to Paolo, with a nice rousing applause. Ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted to start off with a few questions, really referring to your journey. So I guess the thing, you've traveled a fair old way since you left Central School back in the day. I was wondering, you know, as you move from being a designer to being a technologically oriented, engineering oriented entrepreneur, what would you say you'd noticed about particular gaps in terms of your knowledge or experience? What are the differences for you between being an industrial designer perhaps and what you're up to now?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So I think, you know, I consider myself an industrial designer first and foremost. I have to say that. I think I'm definitely wired that way. And we could even talk about the definition of, you know, an industrial designer. And then coming out of school a long time ago now, which was Central School back then, actually, Nick. And what did I want to do, right? And I think that a lot of the students will be asking themselves that. And the sort of traditional path is to go and work for a company, either you know, a regular company like an Apple or whatever, or for a consultancy. And then the third leg on that stool would be to go and be an entrepreneur. And so I took that path, probably not having a full amount of information at that time, being super young. And so I instead of getting a job at a consultancy, I went and worked for money, which is a terrible idea. And I went and worked for a model shop in London making models so I could make more money so I could start my first company. So I wasn't working for money per se, I was working for money to get capital to start a company. And I started that first company. And to your point, I learned very quickly what I didn't know. And at that time, what I didn't really care about too much, which was business. So that company failed. It was just made the rack organizers for the closets, super cute. And after that, a bad experience, but really a good experience in terms of sort of learning, I teamed up with a more business-oriented individual, and we made some barware, and that was really interesting. So that filled in the deficit of my knowledge with that business partner, and we made these glasses with a straw around the outside. And then we got a break, and oftentimes you get a little bit lucky, you know, and we got a break in Star Trek. It appeared on Star Trek. Next thing you know, I'm in my early 20s and we're selling these things by the container. And that was pretty good. That brought us to America. We opened a field office in America, and we were like, okay, that looks really good. Let's go there. You know, so we moved to New York. And once we moved to New York, the company did really well, but it had a very low ceiling height. I think we were doing about £3 million back then, which was really a tremendous amount of money for me back then. But in the scheme of things, it was a low ceiling height. And we'd go to these trade shows and get asked, well, design for us. And we'd say, no, we're busy. And then I thought to myself, well, wait, you know, what am I so busy doing? And realized that perhaps I should broaden my scope. So then I started 500 Group, which was a licensing model. Really, I think to cater to the fact that I wasn't actually that interested in business and logistics and things like that at that time, and ran that for a couple of decades, very successful. And the business model was super simple, royalty business model. we would invent, file patents, make product, license it to industry, sort of on a eternal basis, and sort of wound up being sort of an annuity business. The royalties just kept piling up every year. And then I would say about 7 years ago, I said, okay, I want to be an operator in space. Let me be an operator in space. And so we had a team of people. I was very fortunate, very gifted, talented group, inventing, and said to ourselves, okay, if we're going to be operators in the space, let's fix the biggest problem we can and let's do some good. And that sort of brought us to BOXABL's doorstep.
Okay, that's really interesting because yeah, along the way, I mean, sort of, I've noticed you've got really interesting range of patents across sectors: automotive, DIY, luggage, building products, obviously. I'm just wondering, typically, how do you go about addressing those? Do you look for the space, the product category first, and look for something to fix, or is it about generating ideas off the bat and seeing where they fit?
Yeah, absolutely. So on that topic, if you're just inventing, almost the white sheet of paper is harder than being given a product brief, right? So, what are those principles? What are those first principles? It's like, well, we're not Me Too guys. We're not going to do that. You can't charge a premium, even though we price everything for mass production. We're not the low cost guys. We're not the race to the bottom guys, which is just a subset of knocking off somebody else's product or making a version of. So it had to be new. So then to be new, it's all about the consumer. It's all about the customer in terms of focus on providing value and delighting them, whether it's a functional product or a decorative product, doesn't really matter. It has to be a passionate must-have product. And what we would say back then was, we did a lot with the mass merchants, the big box companies, Walmart, Target, Home Depot, Costco, all of these companies. We would say, okay, fellas, let's look at the shelf and what doesn't exist. So that's kind of hard to do, right? Imagining what doesn't exist. And we said, what is the product category that we have to invent? Let's put our hands in the shelf, let's spread it apart, and what doesn't exist that needs to go right there? Very, very difficult question to answer. And if you find the answer in any particular product category, you're off to the races. So, back then we would be driven, we wouldn't have a product brief per se, but we would have a company that we would be the licensor, they would be the licensee, and we'd license them product to manufacture and distribute on our behalf. And so we were driven by, okay, they are in this space, and then we would just dissect that and we would invent. So that would be the principle of how we got there. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm just coming back to BOXABL a little bit. Clearly, the enterprise has generated a huge amount of interest, and as you say, commitment claiming now tens of thousands of pre-orders, which looks like an envious position to be in, but that must also carry concerns for you. In this context, what would you say are your most pressing challenges?
Concerns, Nick?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a few. Just a few. Yeah, so I think, so our order book, I think, is, we have about 160,000 pre-orders just for the casita, which is this little 20 by 20 building shell that is configured into a studio home. And the building technology that we have, ultimately, we'd be in 3 sizes. If you think of a Lego brick, you think of the little square one, and then the rectangular one, and then the one in between that nobody uses. Those 3 bricks, how they can connect and stack and cantilever, is basically the building box, the BOXABL building system. And as our point of entry, we're just starting with the little square one, which is the little casita that you see. As we continue to scale and roll out the other sizes, the casita will be I believe, less than 1% of our business. So if you extrapolate that, you know, we have 150, 160,000 pre-orders. We have a pretty good footprint in terms of the public consciousness, but still a very young company. So that's going to expand. And that's billions and billions of dollars worth of product that we have to manufacture, or get a lot of people upset if we don't. And then, you know, the Bigfoot is that we believe that will be less than 1% of our business. So that's a sort of big round arc to answer your question. What my concern is, my principal concerns at this stage of the company are twofold. First of all, is to find high quality people. So finding high quality people is an entire discussion on itself, and we're learning as we go. We made some early mistakes in terms of hiring really brilliant people, and then when brilliant people work with each other, I don't know, they just seem to get even more brilliant. So that's really cool. So the reason we need those people is to scale. So my biggest challenge for the company is how do we scale? How do we scale? How we can't afford time-wise to go 1, 2, 3, 4. We have to go 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. So scale is the challenge, and you know, we have plans in place. Certainly can describe how to do that.
Okay, I mean, that's super interesting. I'm assuming that will incorporate some fourth generation industrial manufacturing technologies moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way we look at technology, or the way we look at product, whether it's a house or a paperclip, is that is the commodity. That is what is left after everything that doesn't work conceptually has been thrown out, right? So so we give the commodity or the existing systems for making things their due respect, but we certainly question whether that the way that product is made in this instance, building construction, should remain within that manufacturing method, or whether it basically has redundancies in the manufacturing process, and it's just being done that way because of less legacy issues. You know, we're doing it that way because we've always made it that way. So you know, we look very carefully at that as we develop our process.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm just coming back to the general mission now. Clearly, availability of accessible, affordable, quality housing is a major challenge to equitability and access around the world. Do you see this as an integral part of your mission? And if so, are there any plans for BOXABL around socially oriented interventions that are direct?
So I'm not sure what you mean direct, but the mission of the company is the original mission of the company is to find a big problem and do good works. To say that, we are not a charity, we are for profit. We have to reward ourselves, our investors, our business partners, and our staff. And also the company needs huge quantities of cash, which I don't think is going to be a problem for us, in order to scale. So that's the mission of the company. We did not start with an idea, you know, as professional inventors, if you like. You know, if you're an accountant, you count. That's what you do. You count things. You don't care what you count, right? So if you're a professional designer, if you're a professional industrial designer, it shouldn't matter to you what you design. That's your proficiency, right? So we started with the problem, not the idea, and we said, what's the biggest problem that we can address? And we looked at automotive and like, no, we're not going to be able to do anything there. We don't have the requisite skills, and a bunch of other things. And housing really stuck out as being completely a pre-industrial space, a completely pre-industrial space. Pre-industrial simply means that it's not built in a factory. And the reason it's not built in a factory, as we know, is because they're really, really big. So fix that, and we've got a massive new market category, going back to that conversation earlier about finding the shelf and creating something that doesn't exist. So then the mission of the company now, apart from its good works motives, is threefold: is to produce homes and dwellings as quickly as possible, at the lowest cost possible, and the highest quality. Those are the three legs of that particular stool. And because we are industrial designers, because I am an industrial designer, it has to be beautiful. I don't want to do anything that isn't absolutely stunning. And then when somebody looks at it and says, "Oh wow, that's the first words that have to come out of their mouth." So, in addition to those three directives, you know, highest production rate, lowest cost, highest quality, you know, it has to be drop dead gorgeous. So that's our mission, and our mission is, yeah, there is a housing crisis. It's not just within our national borders. You know, our national borders are here in America, but it's a global problem, and we're determined to fix that global problem. So as part of the design of the building system, we design as well those abstract externalities that have to be incorporated into the building system so that it's sort of genetically programmed from the outset to scale humongously.
Okay, that's really interesting. I mean, so with your entrepreneurial mindset, where do you see the greatest opportunities, creative or entrepreneurial, moving on from today?
Do you mean in building construction or anywhere?
Anywhere. I'm asking an unfair question.
Yeah.
I'm asking you to tip us off.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I don't know that I have the sort of requisite knowledge to answer that. If I look very broadly, I think product development falls into two distinct realms. I think the physical and the digital. So for me and us personally here, and for me certainly, the digital is not my bag, baby, in the immortal words of Austin Powers, right? So, but it is still design, and we are still designing digital software programs. We're just hiring a literal fleet of software engineers. But there's the digital, and then there's the physical. So the industrial design program resides very much in the physical world. So I think you choose which of those two you think you can add value to. Digital is going to happen much quicker. Digital is much easier to replicate, knock off, and make you extinct. Physical will generally be a much slower path developmentally because, oh, I don't know, it's real. And if you do your job correctly as an industrial designer and stick to your first principles, you should be able to create something that, from a brief point of view, from a product brief point of view, is eternal. And maybe, you know, you shoot for the stars, hit the moon or whatever, and it can last, you know, decades or 100 years, if you know, if not, if you can't get to sort of eternal. So those are the two categories, physical and digital. The activity generally is mostly in digital now, I would have to say, and just stepping outside of the world of industrial design, I think robotics and AI is, if I'm really going out to like a 1,000,000-foot view, I think that the world of robotics and AI is the next revolution. It's the next industrial revolution. You know, for thousands of years, we went originally from hunter-gatherers to farming. And for thousands of years, we've been agrarian, which means everything in our lives is based on a function of the cost of human labor. It's some derivative of the cost of human labor. And I think in the next generation, 25 years or so, we will see the next industrial revolution where the cost of everything will fall to about zero, because it won't be based, the cost of goods will not be based on a factor of the cost of human labor, because you'll have you know, humanoid robots. So hopefully that's not too much of a side road. It's a slightly broad question. So to recap, digital, physical, and the new world is going to be, the next industrial revolution is 1000% going to be centered around humanoid robots with decent artificial general intelligence that can, you know, not stumble about or need to be programmed.
Super, thanks for that. I mean, coming back to your personal journey, where would you say where do you derive your greatest creative satisfaction?
Oh, that's a great question. So perhaps if I refer it to my work day and the things that I have to do grown-up things. I'm a pretty decent negotiator. just because I'm older, right? So you learn things. I'm a pretty good fake attorney. I know enough to be dangerous. I love negotiations. I love a good fight, not a physical fight, but in terms of competitors or hostile parties. But nothing is as good as sitting down, opening my laptop and creating something from scratch. Just the excitement of a new idea and fleshing it out, first in my head, then on paper, then on a silly little 2D program called Vellum, Ashwell Vellum, and then onto SolidWorks 3D program. Sure, your viewers are very familiar with that. That is, I can't get enough of that. I'll do that as a busman's holiday. You put me on vacation, that's what I'm going to want to do. So it's the exploration of the origin of that creativity, or the original ideation of finding that new product that nobody has is massively exciting. And then backfilling that with the opportunity in terms of materials and processes and construction and efficiency is super, super exciting. And I'm spoiled enough today that once I've got that fleshed out, I hand it to somebody else to do the finishing. And when I say finishing, it's the 80-20 rule, where the 80-20 rule in my experience is maybe the 95-5 rule, right? So I'll do 5%, I'll hand off 95% to complete the task, complete the product, program, whatever it is. And then there's a whole lot of new invention that gets piled on. People often think that they see an invention, for example, BOXABL, they see the unfolding, they say, oh, what a great invention. It's like, well, yeah, but that's one of many, and it's backfilled again with dozens, if not hundreds and hundreds of smaller inventions. So it's the invention that really gets me up in the morning.
Okay, that makes sense. And whilst we sort of continue down this line a little, if we could, reflecting on your experience, are you able to identify or describe any key moments of personal transition or breakthrough in your career to date?
Yeah, well, I think that your professional career is going to pattern or follow your individual maturity. And it's very hard when you get dumped out into the world. But for your audience, you're 21 to 22 years old. And my experience and my observation, my personal experience and my observation is until you get close to 30, it's tough. It's tough. Your brain hasn't really matured. So, that's very interesting. The plus side is you can dick around for 7 or 8 years figuring out how to get things right. And then things eventually click. Things eventually that appear, and I'm looking back sort of retrospectively now to a chunk of my career, is that things that I could not fathom how to do in my 20s was just like falling out of bed in my 30s and 40s. So, if you're struggling with how to do something, as long as you don't give up and persevere, those things will eventually work themselves out in your brain. And when it all comes together, it's pretty interesting. Everything becomes easy. And then when things become easy, of course, if you have ambition, you just elevate your sight line to make them difficult again, to keep you interested.
Okay. And then sort of continuing on from there, I'm just wondering, if knowing what you know now, what advice would have you given your younger self, who was at a similar age to our audience here, or mostly in their bachelor's studies in product and industrial design?
Oh gosh. So for me, I never really felt like I had a lot of choice about what I wanted to do, and I say that as a positive. Nothing really interested me other than sort of design and creativity, and probably as a character flaw, not really good employee material. So I'm not sure what advice I could give a younger me, but I could certainly give the general advice that when guys are graduating, I think there are two distinct paths that they can take, and they have to figure out, be very honest with themselves about what path do they want to take. Do they want to be employed, or do they want to be an entrepreneur? And everybody put up their hands and go, oh, me, I want to be an entrepreneur. It's like, well, hang on a sec. You know, you can be very happily employed. And generally, you can have narrower, deeper skill sets in terms of form and shape and things of that nature, and not have to broaden your horizons. And if you don't want to broaden your horizons into law and general business and how to run things and how to read people and how to negotiate, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, that's great. And if you're going to be an entrepreneur, understand that it's not going to be all daisies and rainbows, that you're going to endure some extraordinary hard times. Doesn't mean that if you're employed, you won't, by the way. But and if you're going to take that entrepreneurial route, you know, don't think that you can work 9 to 5 and be a successful entrepreneur. You're going to have to give up your entire life towards it, probably for the majority of your life. So, you know, stepping out of sort of the hallowed grounds of Central St. Martin's, I think it's good to say, sit yourself down, have a conversation with yourself, or peers, or folks that you trust, mentors, and say to yourself, which of those two routes am I going to take? Am I going to be an entrepreneur, or am I going to get a job? And I could have given myself that advice when I was young, but frankly, I wouldn't have listened. So,
fair enough. That's a good reading. Okay. I've got one more question, I think, and then I'm going to open it up to the audience. So, Paolo, I understand you're looking for industrial design input, young designers to join the team at BOXABL. If that's still the case, what sort of attributes are you looking for in recruits?
Oh, I really thank you for asking that question. We need talent. We need brilliant talent. We do not have any industrial designers here. We have chemical engineers, process engineers, mechanical engineers. We've got guys from Tesla. We've got guys from Boeing, the aerospace industry. We've got all sorts here. We don't have any industrial designers. So I'll just quickly say, let me describe what industrial design is as far as I'm concerned. Industrial design, if you break that down, industrial is mechanical engineering, and design is art. Mechanical engineering has someone who mechanical engineering, does it work or not, right? It's not abstract. It either works or it doesn't. Is it efficient? Art, there's no judge. Mechanical engineering has a judge, art has no judge. So you've got both sides of your brain trying to figure this out. We cannot have somebody, we cannot have an industrial designer that is a mechanical engineer, because they're going to make ugly shit, right? Excuse my language. And we can't have an artist. We can't just have a designer. First of all, it's too easy. You can just do anything you want and say it's great. And it's like, well, there's no judge, right? Although there is a judge, it's the consumer. So we need the blend of mechanical engineering and art within that individual, that resides in that individual. So that means not only should that candidate have an amazing ability to understand what is beautiful, but also understand how things work, which is, you know, materials and processes. So, and probably won't get that in a modern industrial design course. By materials and processes, you need to understand how everything works, not on day one, but you need to understand plastics, injection molding, vacuum forming, reaction molding, blow molding, metals processing, all the different types of castings, bending, laser, water jet. You need to understand all these things. You actually need to understand the difference between polypropylene and polyethylene, not on day one, but you need to know these things. You need to know draft angles and shrink and ejection points and things like that. Without that, you're a shape person. Without that, you're a shape person. And if you're a shape person, you can have a lovely career, but you're going to be very narrowly cast, and you won't be able to rise your way through an organization in particular, and you're certainly not going to be able to be an entrepreneur. For us internally, we need guys that are using both sides of that brain that understand beauty and understand materials and processes. Not to an expert degree on the latter, because we have those folks here, and it's very much a team effort of how we do things. And I'll just say, yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking that question. If you're brilliant hiring at BOXABL, drop us a line with your book, with your portfolio.
Okay, there's the advertisement, there's the call out. Okay, I'm just going to ask some questions now, invite questions from the audience, those of you who are online and those of you in the room. I've got a question here, which is coming back to questions around sustainability. This is from Renata. What are your challenges related to environmental sustainability? Is your audience concerned about that? Is it in the forefront of your business model? Centralized production, waste management, product end of life, etc.
Yeah, let me be really frank about that. We care about the customer and less about sustainability. Horror, I'm not giving you your average talking points about sustainability, but we are responsible people, and if you make an efficient product, you are sustainable. So let me give you some examples of that, rather than just getting to the finish line and saying, are you sustainable? You know, what does that really mean when you look under the hood? Well, sustainability, as I mentioned in that video, can oftentimes, not exclusively, largely be a function of cost. So let's have a look at a few things. Big giant vanishing point factory behind me. We're not out in the field making a mess, leaving materials and gases out to the open air. So that would be stage one. We're in a factory where we can control and reuse materials. Why do we want to reuse materials? Because it's better for our customer, the consumer. We want to use the amount of materials, and we want to use materials most efficiently, less waste. Again, then we look at, always from the customer-centric point of view, when that building shell is made. You know, we are steel, insulation, and concrete. These are basically thermal batteries. So if you want to stay warm, you can think of it as a thermos, and if you want to stay cold, you can think of it as an igloo cooler. But what does that actually mean, making the customer happy? That means they're using less energy. Pretty cool. So we're thinking about the whole picture. Let's talk about efficiency of transportation. Always with an eye not to sustainability. We're not heathens. We're not folks who hate sustainability or a green earth. But if we focus on the customer, we get that as a very healthy byproduct. So when we deliver our product, for example, we ship on one truck instead of 3. What does that save in terms of pollutants? Why? Because we triple in size when we get on site. Also, we don't like the big rigs. They're very bad on gas mileage, and they're very expensive to make and maintain. So we use pickup trucks. They have twice the gas mileage, cost in US dollars 50,000 instead of 250,000, and we can pull 2 casitas, 2 homes instead of 1. Does that sound like sustainability? I think so. And then the ultimate sustainability, which is really mind expanding, and is a result not of not directly saying to ourselves how sustainable can we make this, but how efficient can we make this. Our homes pack up, they fold up, they're building shells with 9.5-foot ceilings, 40-foot clear spans. I'm not in meters, excuse me. Huge windows and doors that don't need headers, that, you know, the lintels over the top, they can just be cut out. Those building shells can not only do they unpack, but they can pack and unpack hundreds of times. We've done it. Isn't that the ultimate in sustainability, where you put down a home or a building shell and it doesn't have to stay there when it's end of life for whatever reason? You know, you've got a family, they're growing, they're at a bedroom, you get an older family, kids have gone to college, they eliminate a bedroom, they got less of a footprint, but that product that served them for decades can go into the secondary markets, maybe our secondary market or an eBay, and live a useful life somewhere else. So we really get under the hood of all of these things, right down to the granular level. And we are just, obviously, the net result is extraordinary sustainability, but it's focused on consumer and the customer, not talking points.
Okay, okay. That's quite neat, because another question here, which is about an extension, a detail of the consumer, and the question is, have you considered additional features to suit women, specifically new mothers or pregnant women, in your designs?
Yeah, absolutely. If we're talking about women, if you look at the factory behind me, not directly answering your question, but because we're not out in a field in the hot, in the cold, going up 3 or 4 stories carrying heavy things, we have a much larger female workforce than a traditional building company, much higher. And they're great employees. And then in terms of answering your question directly, this just comes down to configuration, right? So I don't even understand the question. We have a technology that makes building shells. The building shells can be stack connected cantilever to make any combination of product, most things most of the time. And then the other part of that is how that building shell is configured. So today, for example, we configure the smallest building shell into a studio home. When we make a larger home, if the person asking your question wants a nursery, it can be configured as a nursery. So I don't really understand the question.
Okay, okay. I think you've answered it well. Okay, anyone in the room would like to ask a question? Can I see a hand? Okay, hang on, I'll just get a microphone for you.
Oh, very nice.
You got one. Right, come on down. Like last time, eh? Yeah, got you.
Hi, fellow British American here. What would you say is the major transition between working in England and working in the States?
Oh, what a great question. What a great question. So I'll break it down into 3 parts, if I may. So, when I was in London, it was a different London. When I go back, it's not my London anymore. It makes me cry a little bit inside because I really love London. So growing up, my observation, not necessarily everybody else's observation, that when I was growing up, and I mean like a boy, 12, 13, 14, 15, and everything in the USA just seems sort of bolder and more colorized and more glamorous, I have to say. And I absolutely love England, but I do believe that is the case. So when we left London, we came to New York, and that was really a big grey city with a very different culture. And the funny thing is, such a great question. The funny thing is, everybody looked like me. Or they looked like my friends back home, any stripe of friend, and had all the same people, but and they spoke English. But then I realized, it took me, I think, a year to realize, hang on, this is a completely different culture, right? So things like sarcasm, not big on sarcasm for humor. So, that's a big one. You might want to tone that down. And then I realized that in England, you can go anywhere in England, and the accent might change, but the culture does not. The accent might change, but the culture really does not. It's all versions of. Whereas America is so big, we came out west 5 years ago to set up operations for BOXABL, and I just sort of got hit upside the head again with yet another cultural shift to sort of the Western states, laid back, gun-toting, which I love, culture, much more sort of a freedom culture. So I think you just have to be really observant. And I think I was guilty in both instances of going from England to the east coast of the US and then to the west coast of the US just 5 years ago. Maybe I didn't pay enough attention to everybody looks like me and speaks English, but actually totally different culture.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. Thanks. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Do you want to come down? Excellent.
So I have a quick question. You said your focus is very big on the customer, and while developing the product, you really look at what exactly the customer wants. How exactly do you know how the customer wants? How much research do you put in that, and how do you keep in contact with what the consumer really wants at the market as well?
Yeah, that's really a terrific question. So in the arc of any product, you have to speculate, right? So a good entrepreneur and a good designer will make 100% decision with 20% of the information. You can't wait until you have 100% of the information, or the product bus has left the station. So let me give you some examples of that. For example, when we ship our product, how low can they ship to the ground to safely without grounding, because we need all the height we can get. So we went around and looked at transport trailers and realized that they're 4 inches off the ground. So we said, well, 6 inches should do it. We make sort of quick decisions like this. So in the arc of product development, you have to make grand and grandiose decisions with confidence, but knowing that you might be wrong with a small amount of information. Okay, so that's number one. And then secondly, we have a very big country and a very big world with a lot of different architectural tastes. So we always leave ourselves with sort of side roads. One of the beautiful things about BOXABL, for example, if we're looking at a sort of super high level, is that we're architecturally neutral. We don't have an architectural style on purpose because it's a big world, with the exception that we're rectilinear. But then when you look at it, unless you're an Eskimo living in a round igloo, you're living in a rectilinear structure, and your bedrooms might be larger and smaller, and there may be a custom, minor differences, but pretty much, everything is the same. And finally, I'll say we are so appreciative of our customers for a number of reasons that we have set up here, and we will do these with our franchise factories as well, that we call it a Disney tour, Jurassic Park tour, and we get dozens of people coming every day, and we talk to them, and our designers talk to them. And what I mean by a tour, first of all, even setting up in Las Vegas, if we set up in Boise, Idaho, I think we'd have trouble getting as many fans and customers to come. But in Las Vegas, everybody wants to come to Las Vegas, so that's good. And then we set up our tour, behind me, you see the electric bus goes by, giving tours every few minutes, and they put on gear, they sign the waiver, they get in the car, the doors open, and they take the tour. And we are interacting with our customers all the time, and we hear what they love and we hear what they don't. We have a massive social media presence. So again, using that word, we backfill our information as we go, understanding what we love and what we don't. We have 45,000 investors and a massively interested investor group, but they're also fans and they want to buy as well as regular folks. And then to answer your question more broadly, as we franchise around the world, we will have franchise partners. Why? Well, foreign lands, foreign tastes, foreign laws, foreign everything. And we need local Sherpas, we need local knowledge. So it's a multifaceted approach to understanding what the consumer wants. And sometimes what they want, they're actually unable to articulate it, or sometimes what they want, we can show them something significantly better. So we stay light on our feet and we keep our ear to the ground and listen from any number of different directions. And it's a little easier in the US because we have 50 states with common laws, generally speaking. And even though taste varies on exterior style, do you want a quartz countertop? Yeah. How big should my bedroom be? About this big. You go to a third world country, that bedroom's going to be a lot smaller. So we can start with our training wheels on in the USA with just a more sort of common group of people. But yeah, so a bunch of different things we do, and it's a great question.
Thank you. Can I ask you really quick another question about your career? How exactly did you transition from being a designer to being an entrepreneur? Because that requires different skill sets as well. Did you acquire those skills on the way, or how exactly did you learn these things?
Yeah, So just for me, I can only speak for myself personally, not offering advice. You know, someone can sit and say that there was some massive plan. There's no massive plan. You get up in the morning and you have one idea, and you get up the following morning and you have, you know, another idea with a general tow line of where you want to go, right? So for me, there was no transition and there was no choice. I am first and foremost a designer, first and foremost an industrial designer. That is the center of me and everything that means. And I had no choice but to be an entrepreneur, just because that's the way I'm wired. So yeah, so there was no transition. It's just how I was wired from the outset.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. Anyone else? Yep, do you want to come down? There's another question there, yeah? Okay, you're next. Are you okay for time, Paolo?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm here. I'm here for you.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Hi. Do you have any advice for a young entrepreneur?
A young entrepreneur?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've got 3 words for you. I'm going to pause just to make it more dramatic. Never give up. Just never give up. So you're going to get smacked upside the head so many times. You're going to fail. You don't beat yourself up, because how could you possibly know what you need to know leaving college? The answer is you can't, right? So you're going to learn along the way. As I mentioned earlier, I think it'll probably take you a decade. If you're really brilliant, it might happen sooner. Didn't happen sooner for me. Didn't happen sooner for me. So I guess I wasn't that brilliant. But just never give up. Just never give up. And then look inside yourself and say, am I willing to give this all it takes? You know, is my girlfriend going to take a back seat? Are my kids going to take a back seat? Everything. That's what you have to be if you really want to be an entrepreneur. Doesn't mean you can't have a work-life balance. Doesn't mean you can't hang out with your kids and love them. Doesn't mean you can't spend lots and lots of time with your girlfriend or your wife. But you better be prepared that when your brain goes to idle or your mouth is shut, that you're thinking about work. That's it. That's the truth. Reality bites.
So thank you.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
I think we've got another person coming down. Whilst you're on your way down, I've got another one coming in, which is sort of, you're so honest, and this is fantastic. Well, that's good, isn't it? Could you please talk a bit about the mass customization you're offering and what structure is required to answer so many individual requests?
Yeah. So, you know, when we looked around originally at the problem, you have to ask. Mass customization is actually a great phrase, and I'm going to steal it if I may, Nick. I mean, it's great. And that's exactly what we have. So when we talk to people originally, we realized, and it's common sense, when people are yearning for a home, or they're building a custom home, or they want a comfortable home, they're saying, you know, I want, you know, an ensuite bedroom, or I want a studio home, and I want a nice a bathroom. But they're not saying, I want to move the wall 3 inches in or out, or I want this exact ceiling height. They're not saying those things. So we divide mass customization. So on the mass side of things, it's literally mass. It's really modeling mass, that we've made these building shells, which is, I'm sorry, I'm not in meters, but 9.5 foot ceiling height. You know, I live in a super fancy condominium in the Las Vegas Strip. I've got cheesy 9-foot ceilings. I feel like I've been gypped. BOXABL, $50,000-$60,000 has a 9.5 foot ceiling. We've future-proofed ourselves there, and it doesn't matter whether it's low income or a mansion. That 9.5 foot ceiling is pretty sweet. Along with, when we get to the larger size, 40-foot clear span. These are basic principles. You know, what can't you fit in a 40-foot clear span that's 20 foot wide? So we start with those principles and say it has to be better than everybody else. And then within that, you know, we can configure. So I'll give you a very quick example. When we made the casita, and looking for a nice efficiency, we cut the windows into the panel at the beginning. So the concrete, the insulation, the metal, they were all cut out with the windows. So we've done the classic 1 step back, 2 steps forward. As we scale and we can go from, sorry, I'm sort of an analogy guy today, but from the black Model T Ford to the amazing variety of automotive styles and brands that we have today. We're Model T Ford today, and we said, well, let's not cut the windows in earlier. It's a little bit more work to cut them later, but guess what? The customer can cut them in where they want, based on a given template as we develop our software. So, you know, we went to those first principles and thought, building shells, 3 sizes, stack, connect, cantilever, create 3 decks on one side, 3 porches on the other, value, value, value. And then, you know, what do they want to put inside? What does the customer want inside? So again, the 80-20 thing, 80% of people are going to want the same thing, you know, culture by culture. So here they want, you know, big bathrooms and ensuite bathrooms I mentioned earlier and things like that. So we're sort of our DNA, we're genetically programmed to offer greater and greater customization, you know, as the business develops. But you've absolutely hit the nail squarely on the head, that in order to scale, we could not say, oh, look, you know, we're so clever, we're making this home fold down and it's an A-frame style home or a contemporary home and everybody's got to live this way. That's kind of arrogant, right? So what we say instead is we have a building system. We're going to take care of all the heavy lifting and you're going to be able to finish it how you like if you want to finish it. And what we have now, we've just put up outside the factory, because we're architecturally neutral, we've dressed the casitas. We call it dress up. And we've done one as a log cabin, one as a contemporary, one as a stucco adobe, and one as a very brightly colored Caribbean. We're even doing one as honest to goodness, real life gingerbread house, which we're calling Candyland, which my personal favorite, of course. So, and that's just dress up. That can be done in the field. So, you know, oftentimes if you make a generic product, it's sort of master of none, does nothing well. But I think we've very carefully threaded the needle where the factory, which wants to make a nut and a bolt over and over and over again, they want repeatability. That's what drives speed up or slow and quality up, by the way. Repeatability drives quality up, but when it gets into the hands of the customer, we have massive configurability, both on the inside and the outside. And as we scale, we won't even know all the configurations. So we're looking at sort of that AI chatbot or whatever, and we're actually exploring that as we scale to help us figure out all the different configurations as we scale. Right now, we've got 1 SKU going to 5 SKU. We're going from a studio home through a 5-box configurability that goes from studio to 4-bedroom. Customers can move things around tremendously, and it's just the beginning for us. Even to being able to have the customer get an alert to see their home going down the production line, and when it's wrapped up with his belly band at the end, they're going to be able to write on whatever they want to write on, you know, hi honey, happy anniversary, whatever you want to put on there. So it's really a great question. Mass customization. Thanks, Nick.
That's it. Okay, I think we could take one more question. Would you join the hot seat?
I like this hot seat.
So you told us what an industrial design has to do to excel, and also what it takes to be an entrepreneur. As an industrial design, could you give us some tips about team building, teamwork, and skill matching, if these things were useful in your journey? And also,
yeah.
do you get summer job application?
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Well, you're in because you're asking you're gaming the system, so you know what to put on the application, which I thoroughly encourage. So, you know, for industrial design, as I said, has to be a blend of beauty and materials and processes, and understanding those materials and processes. And that can be learned over time as long as the mind is open. But you have to look at some of the things I spoke about earlier. You have to look at beauty, you have to look at cost, you have to look at assembly and manufacturing. Look at Elon Musk. This is one of the most brilliant industrial designers on earth. And I think it's, you know, postscript on his resume, right? Go and sit in a Tesla and see what beauty looks like. In my book, go and sit in the factory and see what beauty looks like. How far are you moving a component? How many components do you have? Can that component be assembled very, very quickly? Is it easy to manufacture? Simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. Rationalization, rationalization. You can't just think about the shape. That's getting to the finish line. That's just getting to the candy at the end. But we have to do, you know, the hard work before then. We have to think about manufacturability, or you're just creating a problem for your team members. If you come and work in a team with process engineers in the factory side, mechanical engineers on the engineering and design side, if you just come in and you're getting scatter pillows and throwing them around to make them pretty, you're not helping anybody. You have to help the team with the manufacturing. So to make a product for the consumer that meets their needs, which has to be perfect. You think about, in a consumer world, you think about buying something on Amazon, how perfect everything is in a modern world. That doesn't just happen by happenstance. That happens because the different teams work together. And the industrial designer oftentimes is the arbiter of deciding, well, no, we need this extra component because the customer is going to love it, or let's get rid of that component, or let's combine components, or how easily it can be made on the manufacturing floor. So I would think that if you're an industrial designer, you should understand beauty, and that should be like just falling out of bed in the morning. You should be instinctively know how to do that, and you should have enough skills to be able to reach out to the mechanical engineers and the factory floor and think of those two things, and then beyond that, think about how this product is shipped. Can it stack? Can it nest? Is it efficient? How can it be displayed? You have to look, an industrial designer has to look at industrial design as a pie. Any pie you like, pizza for me, I think. And they just slice it up and think of all the problems associated with that product, from supply chain, raw materials, to sitting on the shelf or getting to a consumer. You have to think about all of that, and that's what's going to make you a successful industrial designer, unless you go work for Nike and just do a bunch of shapes and have a great career, and that's fine. But if you really want to be a truly memorable industrial designer, you got to look at the whole thing. Industrial design, it's industrial design, and all of those points apply to entrepreneurship, except you have to expand your brain beyond the product itself. You have to understand negotiation. You have to understand business. You have to understand you're going to get into some significant business fights, and you have to understand how to read people and work with people, and create a team where you're leading by example and being fair and equitable. Tough, but fair and equitable. Maybe I'm talking about myself. So those are some of the things. Hopefully that helps. And I do encourage anybody that likes anything I'm saying, likes BOXABL, likes what they see here, jump on a plane, come find us. It's not that hard. And the worst that can happen is you have a vacation in Las Vegas.
Thank you.
Okay, there's an invitation. Paolo, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for sharing your journey and where you are with such generosity. Really appreciate it. And I would like to extend a similar invitation to you. If you find yourself jumping on a plane coming this way, please do come by and visit us.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks so much, Nick. And for the audience, I've sat where you're sitting. I've sat where you're sitting, so I know the things that are going through your heads. So it's just a wonderful time as you think about graduating in the next few years. you have literally nothing to lose. Your overhead is low. You're probably not married. You probably don't have children. This is the time to explore and risk and get outside of yourselves. The biggest risk is not taking that risk, as confounding as that may sound. And I'll say, Nick, I don't know if Central is still doing annual shows, but either myself or one of our team probably will does plan to come down if that's a thing, and we can talk offline about that. But prior to that, you know, when I graduated, we had a couple of folks that got scooped up by Apple, and a couple of other significant alums that went on to create some really remarkable businesses, and that can be absolutely anybody in your audience. And frankly, we'd like to find those people and have them come here.
That's great. I think we can arrange that, Paolo. Thanks a lot, and a nice round of applause from everyone.
Thank you, everybody.